not going to necessarily say they were hands-on Black Panthers, right? But they definitely were in like a conscious community and conscious movement that was going on in the 60s and 70s here. Not only here in the Bay Area, but that was kind of nationally,
That's right.
right?
That's right.
So they were involved in that and involved in being a part of that, whether it's just wearing a natural afro or, in the clothing, or also the decision to surround myself and my brother by these Black authors and Black writers and things, and also giving us these African names, right? Even though we got the last name White, we all got these African, names and names with purpose and meaning and that type of thing. So, we used to get made fun of the names all the time. I did all the time, right? And then they're going to say, well, how's your last name White? You know what I'm saying?
if you're Khalid. What's happening, y'all? This is Mike D with Black Fathers Now, where we're bringing the village to the brothers. Every couple of weeks, you can look forward to a quick inspirational message or a thought-provoking guest with knowledge and wisdom, all geared towards helping you be the best father that you can be. We're bringing the village to you. Now it's your turn to do something with what you learned. All right, y'all. Let's go. What's going on, fellas? This is Mike D with Black Fathers Now. And dig this, man, I got a guest that is a dynamic brother that's doing a whole lot of stuff to kind of impact us as fathers, but really just impact the world and impact the community. And that brother is none other than Dr. Khalid White. He's the author of the book and film Black Fatherhood, Trials and Tribulations, Testimony and Triumph. I said that right. Book and film, right? It's a book and a film, fellas. Listen. But he's a husband, a father, a leader, believer, educator, author, filmmaker, business owner, and mentor. I got to exhale. Okay, it's a lot. But the brother's based out of the Bay Area of California, and he's a graduate of Morehouse College, Harvard University, and UC Davis and Sonoma State University. Fellas and ladies listening in the Black Fathers Now family, let's welcome my man, Dr. Khalid White. Brother, how you doing?
Very well, man. Thank you for having me, Mike. Thank you for allowing me this platform, Black Fathers Now.
No doubt, my man, no doubt. Now, before we get started, we like to give shout-outs, right? So I know if you want to do the right thing with the spouse and all of that, you better give some shout-outs, my brother.
I definitely want to give a shout-out to my wife and to my daughter first off, first and foremost, to you and the people listening. Big shout-out as well. And, just a thank you again. When you give shout-outs, you're going to miss somebody in here. So I just want to say thank you to everybody listening and all the supporters as well.
That's what's up. That's what's up, my brother. Now, like I said, with this bio, with your accomplishments and all of that stuff, man, we're going to jump straight into it. But before we get into that, I want you to take us back, man. Like, take us back to where all this stuff began. Like, what's your origin story, man? Where did all this stuff start, brother?
Where did all this stuff start? Wow. That's a
loaded question.
Yeah, because there's different origins for different ones. But I started myself. I grew up in a city called Fremont, California, which is between Oakland and San Jose, right? So it's a small kind of suburban city, and getting the chance to kind of to leave the city and to go to the historically Black college was where I first started seeing kind of this idea of Black entrepreneurship on a bigger level. So for me, it was being, I went to the city of Atlanta and saw, you had your Black mayor, your Black doctors, your Black this, you saw your Black T-shirt hustle, man, your Black, fruit man, and all this different type of stuff. So I was like, man, I see myself in a lot of these scenarios. I can envision myself in a lot of these scenarios. And just to back that up a step or two, on both sides of my family, we have a lot of Black entrepreneurs, so it's kind of in my blood to get into business for myself. And so in college, with some friends, I started a business we started a collective business where we would do parties and things like that. So that was my first kind of taste of get into business and Black-owned business for myself in about 2021. Have some ups and downs. It's tough to go into business with your friends.
What you talking about?
Because not everybody, is, it's just money, friends, the whole nine. But learning, that was a life learning lesson. So I knew that, just as terms of my business origins, I wanted to do that. It was kind of innate in me, but at the same time, I saw so much of that when I went down south. And so, fast forward to 2018, right? I'm still doing the business thing. Also, when I was in college with my friends, we started tutoring and mentoring little kids at a after-school program. Yeah, so that after-school program, it was called Raising Expectations. Later on in Atlanta, it morphed into one of the first charter schools and award-winning charter schools, Drew Charter School. And so working with little kids is where I got my educational start. And that was from just the homies getting together and tutoring little 4th graders and 5th graders and that type of thing. So as far as where I got my start in education, it was just volunteering, working with kids, enjoying working with, with youth and laughing with them, joking with them, but also trying to teach them some math and some science and some history and that type of thing. So that's kind of my educational, origin as far as how I got into that professionally. And then, man, just being an avid reader as a kid and being introduced, to books, and really to books by and about Black people, that's how I got into, okay, hey, I can do this. I love to write and I love to read, so I could do this later on down the line. Honestly, man, I was a kid and I wrote a book in the 4th grade. I remember, being 4th or 5th grade, writing a book about animals playing football. And that was like a project we did for school. So that was technically my first book that I wrote. Was like, 4th, 5th grade, man.
Wow.
So I guess that's another origin story, but just being introduced to books, and still loving to read and still being an avid reader myself, that's kind of how I got into that part of the.
Now, speaking of that, like you mentioned, your introduction to books and specifically books that were authored by Blacks or Black people.
Yeah.
So was that a concerted effort by your parents or by a mentor or what?
Yes, that was a concerted effort by my parents for sure. They just had a lot of Black books around the house. And, back in the days we had bookshelves and that type of thing, right? So there was books by and about and written by and about Black history and Black culture and by Black authors. I remember reading The Conspiracy to Destroy Black Boys by, Kunjufu, right? Back when I was in the 5th grade or something, 6th grade. And now I didn't know nothing about that. I just happened to grab that book off my shelf for silent reading.
Wow.
We had silent reading in class or something like that. And I just happened to grab that book. So it was books like that, the ISIS papers and things like that were on the shelf. That hey, I just kind of gravitated towards books, and I really gravitated towards autobiography.
We have a shared love there, because you learn so much about autobiographies and the biographies of people in the sense that you really understand who they are in their journey. Because people don't take time. Folks like to look at the end point. They like to look at what.
That's all we see.
That's it. That's all you see. But if you take time to look at someone's autobiography, if you take time to look at someone's journey, you then have the opportunity to find points in which you can actually connect to that person.
Absolutely. So I'm a big autobiography fan. And those were some of the books that I can recall. Just the autobiography of Malcolm X, the Alex Haley book, sitting on the shelf, and I would just pick that up here or there, browse through it, read it, and it gives you the complexities of people. Malcolm X is a hero. He has that little snippet of his life where he's Malcolm X, where he kind of did the most good. But again, that book, that autobiography, takes you from his origins as a son of sharecroppers, in the Midwest, all the way through his hustling days, all the way through prison, all the way to the end. So, we see again that end result, but the autobiographies allow us to see basically the trials and tribulations that these people go through, right? So,
and to that point, it's interesting. Like when I hear you talk about your parents made a concerted effort to expose you to books, specifically Black books and books authored by Black folks. You're in the Bay Area. That makes me want to even take a step back and ask, what were your parents' inspirations? Like, because the Bay Area, and you're like, how old are you? I'm 38. Are you in my age bracket?
I'm 37.
Okay, so you and I are in the same age bracket. So that means your parents, if they were in the Bay Area, probably were around the whole Black Panther
Absolutely.
You know, it's I'm
Absolutely.
just kind of putting two
Yeah.
and two together. And so I was like, so taking it back there, what were your parents' inspirations to make that, something important, in the lives
Yeah.
of you growing up?
Definitely. Well, I'm not going to necessarily say they were hands-on Black Panthers, right? But they definitely were in like a conscious community and conscious movement
Mm-hmm.
that was going on in the '60s and '70s here, not only here in the Bay Area, but that was kind of
That's
nationally,
right.
right?
That's right.
So they were involved in that and involved in being a part of that, whether it's just wearing a natural afro or, in the clothing, or also the decision to surround myself and my brother by these Black authors and Black writers and things, and also giving us these African names, right?
Mm.
Even though we got the last name White, we all got these African, names and names with purpose and meaning and that type of thing. So, we used to get made fun of the names all the time. I did all the time,
Mm-hmm.
right? And then they gonna say, "Well, how's your last name White?"
Uh-huh.
At the same
if you're Khalid, how you gonna have Khalid,
yeah, Khalid
White?
Akil White, exactly. So we would get made fun of, and that people would tease and that type of thing. But it's really just, again, they come from my parents at least come from out of this this consciousness, this Black consciousness movement that was heavy in the '60s and '70s, and on college campuses and in communities here in whether it be Oakland or San Francisco or even Los Angeles, all in California. So, long story short, in the '80s, that's how we get these names. That's how we get introduced to these books in the '80s and '90s, and it goes without saying. I'm an African American Studies professor now.
Mm.
So all that, again, these are seeds that's been
Wow.
planted since I was 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and now in my 30s. Here we are.
Man.
So it kind of came full circle.
And brothers that are listening, I want you all to pay attention to that. Where he is now, you can think about a flower that's blooming. All these seeds were planted from the jump. These seeds were planted by his parents. The seeds of, having, inspirational things in the household. Like, for instance, if you think about the things that are in your house right now, how many of those things serve as inspiration to your children? Right? If we stop and really think about that, and it's not even from the standpoint of us directing it, by just having things throughout our house that our kids can garner inspiration from, imagery is so important. And so when when Khalid talks about the fact that there were Black books and autobiographies of Black folks and things made by Black people, and his parents, wore the naturals and came from a place of consciousness, all those things help to influence how he grew up and how he thought about himself. I just read a book not long ago by Naeem Akbar called Know Thyself. And it's the whole concept of really knowing yourself. Like, you get that sense of who you are by the imagery and by the things that are placed in the environment that you grew up in. And so, fellas, as we're listening to this and listening to his journey, think about that in regards to the kids that are in your household. What types of things are in their current environment? Where they talk about like epigenetics or whatever, in which things in the environment influence how, a person or the genes express. I mean, that stuff matters, right? And so to that point,
absolutely.
having those things around helped to influence Dr. White. How about now in your life? Because with Black Fathers Now, it's about bringing the village to the brothers so that you can take these insights and inspiration and wisdom to apply to your life right now. What things are you putting in your kids' environment right now that are going to influence or plant the seeds for things to grow and develop later? Fellas, think about that.
Absolutely. And that's a great point that you make, Mike, in terms of the imagery. Because it was books, in addition to that, it was Black posters and Black art and things of that nature. And again, not everything was 100% Black, but it was probably 75-25, in terms of, other things that weren't, we also read other books, I loved 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, and I loved books, written by, some of these authors that we had to read in elementary and middle school, like Island of the Blue Dolphins and Where the Red Fern Grows, all these different like history books. I love that, But anyway, we also got kind of inundated with Black cultural books and Black art and Naeem Akbar and Visions for Black Men and all these different types of things. We read those types of books as well. So,
That's cool. And I guess another question now, when I hear this, it makes me think, now, did that make you or did that inspire you to want to go to an HBCU? Was that the only option that you really saw, or were you kind of pushed in that direction, or what do you think about that?
That's a good question. You know, again, a lot of my family, because my family originally came from the South, Louisiana and you know Oklahoma and that type of thing. So they all went to black colleges. I come from people that went to college too, even if they didn't all graduate, but a lot of them went to the historically black colleges. Like that's almost like a lineage, you know. So you know, I got a chance, man, actually to go on a college tour, a black college tour. There was a man who used to run an annual tour out of San Jose, California. His name was Carl Ray, and he took black kids, you know, to the South. And he took us even more in terms of imagery, man. He took us during homecoming season.
Oh, he knew what he was doing.
Man.
He knew what he was doing.
Boy, once I hit, you know, we first went to Atlanta, and then we went to Tuskegee's homecoming. It was all kind of around. Man, I was sold.
It was a done deal.
Done deal. And you talk about imagery. I saw some images that I still remember to this day. It's put like that.
You know, it's so funny you talk about that because, you know, I grew up in Augusta, Georgia. So I was born and raised in Augusta, Georgia. And my wife is from Los Angeles, right? But my wife's from Los Angeles, but she ended up going and graduating from Tuskegee. And it was almost the exact same thing. There was a black college tour from Los Angeles that she went on, and she went to the AUC, and they went to Tuskegee, and I think they went somewhere like in Louisiana, if I'm not mistaken, as well. But they hit, you know, kind of the black college circuit. And I don't know if they went during homecoming or not. That might have been the reason why she was sold on going to HBCU as well. But long story short, it was kind of the same format from the West Coast, you know, for her to end up in Tuskegee, Alabama from Los Angeles.
Man, I mean, you know, it's interesting. We're kind of so far removed out here in California, right, from, you know, that kind of black college experience because it's just all out in the South and Southeast. And we grew up around black people, yes, but at the same time, once you go and you are in that black college environment, again, imagery, just seeing not only black professors, but the black janitor, not only the black college president, but also the black, you know, cafeteria worker, and seeing these young men and young women going to school and carrying books and still enjoying themselves and things. That was an experience that it left an indelible mark on an impressionable young man at 17 years old, you know. And so I was like, oh yeah, I found a quote unquote a home. Yeah, this is it, man. And then, you know, just to be perfectly honest with you, after black colleges, you know, it's probably 12, 13 women to every one man. So when I saw all those sisters kind of walking around the yard and stuff, I just was like, what?
Done deal.
This is absolutely crazy. So, you know, I'm a married man now, but I do remember, you know, all that different type of stuff.
We're not going to go too far down that lane, but yes.
Not at all.
But now, let me tell you what's so funny about that, because, you know, you said you're 37, I'm 38, and I went to Georgia Tech. So you and I were actually... Yeah, right down the street around the same time, and you talk about that. You know, at Spelman, they used to have Market Fridays.
Oh, absolutely.
And so, so we used to leave Georgia Tech. I'd be cutting class on Friday afternoon to go down to Market Friday at the AUC. And so it just, from an imagery perspective, from an influence, I mean, it was as close to a hype episode of A Different World that you could get. You know what I'm saying? Like, it was all of that. So
it was we lived in A Different World, Stomp the Yard, and what's the one with Nick Cannon? It was that Stomp the Yard, that Nick Cannon Drumline.
Drumline, yep.
We lived that whole Drumline, movie in real life. So that was pretty cool, pretty great experience. And you know, Georgia Tech and the AUC are probably 2 miles away.
That's right.
But it's a different world between Tech and the black colleges, even though we're 2 miles, 3 miles away. Totally different world.
And it's funny you say that. See, I grew up in the Southeast, and you know, like I said, I have a lot of family members that went HBCU route. But one of the things, to your point, there is such a huge difference between HBCUs and the PWIs, the predominantly white institutions, from a cultural perspective. Like Georgia Tech, you know, great education and resources and all of that, but there was not that same cultural component that you get at any HBCU. And it basically was exemplified by the things that you were talking about, in the sense that you saw black diversity at all levels, from the socioeconomically privileged kids of celebrities down to, to folks that may be working in, the service capacity or whatnot, that college was not even anything that they were going to do. But you saw the full gamut of the diversity of black. And that's something that, it was interesting with the movement that you're starting and some of the things that I'm doing on my end, like how we're showing the diversity of blackness across the board. We're not this monolithic, jumble that everybody is exactly the same. We connect on a lot of different levels, but there's diversity in blackness.
Absolutely. I'm glad you pointed that out and said that we're not monolithic. And that's one of the things I think, I'm so happy to see kind of this, I guess, black millennial generation, man. They're so different and they're so unique in opening up these various lanes, whether it's the Black Panther, and having millennials kind of run that and being black in tech and black businesses and all these different things. Like, we're so very diverse as a people. And I got a chance, like you're saying, to see diversity among black America and the black world, because you have people from Africa, the Caribbean, you have blacks from the South, from the West, from New York, Chicago, a whole bunch of differences in terms of culture, but a whole bunch of socioeconomic differences, a whole bunch of differences in perspective and thought. It wasn't like you just turn on BET and you think that's what black America is. No, that's just that's one, millislice of what the black world really encompasses, man. We're such a diverse and dynamic people. And to be honest with you, we set the trends. We've been setting trends since day one, since, the earth since man was created, right?
That's it.
So,
That's it. And that's so real. And again, I think I want brothers to understand that, and that's why it's so important for us to have so many brothers doing things in so many different genres and having multifaceted approaches. Because at the end of the day, everybody's not going to connect to everything, but we have to show that we honestly do make an influence or make an impact in virtually every genre, in every segment, in every area of life. There is somebody black, specifically a black man, this is Black Fathers now, making some level of impact there. We just have to open our eyes and see it, but also celebrate brothers who are doing things different, right? Don't always celebrate somebody who's copy and pasting and doing that. We celebrate them too, but at the end of the day, also celebrate the brother who might be making country music. Yeah, I might not groove with it, but you know what? There's going to be somebody who will groove with that, and it's something that we need to celebrate the diversity of blackness.
Absolutely.
And so thinking about celebration of diversity and, being creative and all of that, I mentioned that you're the author of the book and the film, Black Fatherhood, Trials and Tribulations, Testimony and Triumph. Give me the backstory to the creation of this book, man, and then also kind of dive into the notion of how you went from just having a book to turning this thing into a film. Talk to us.
No problem. So in terms of diversity, right? Let me set the backstory. So I was watching the whole Michael Brown situation unfold in 2014, right? We saw the killing of Michael Brown and the devastation it caused on his community and his neighborhood and his family and in our collective village, right? So I'm sitting there watching kind of the news, walk me through what happened because, I'm not in Ferguson, but I can watch it, on TV. So the news was kind of really not only vilifying Michael Brown and demonizing him, and really justifying his murder, but they also demonized and villainized his father and his stepfather and said, okay, well, had they been there or had they been doing what they were supposed to be doing, X, Y, and Z. I mean, they may not have said those words specifically, but that was the connotation, right? That was what was implied. And so had they been doing what they were supposed to be doing as men, Michael Brown would still be alive, and these riots and this uprising wouldn't have happened. Was more or less the tone, right? So, I'm like, man, they killed this dude. They killed this young brother who was on his way to college. They never mentioned that, and they left him in the street and how they did him. They never mentioned any of that. They vilify him. They vilify his community. They vilify his father and them. And so, I couldn't bring Mike Brown back. I can't bring him back. I can't take away what happened, but as a father and as a black man, I was incensed and I was frustrated with that. And I said, you know what, man, we sit here and watch this from Trayvon Martin to Michael Brown to Freddie Gray to Tamir Rice to Oscar Grant to all these different, to what just happened in Pittsburgh to Stephon Clark out there in Sacramento, all these different killings of these black men and black women, Sandra Bland, who, I don't want to miss out any, I don't want to leave out any names, but you get the picture, right? So
that's right.
Anyway, they're taking away fathers from families and sons from mothers and all these different things, and nobody's going to jail, nobody's been held accountable. And so with that being said, man, they just continue to kind of demonize the black family and black men especially, target us. So I said, look, as a person who has a small level of influence, let me do what I can do to offset some of that negative imagery. Mm-hmm. So what I did was go into business for myself, and after seeing this, kind of was like, hey man, if I was to create some imagery of positivity, of some empowerment, of some things that could galvanize Black America and make us feel better about ourselves and start to treat ourselves better, maybe it would stop a killing or two. Maybe it would, alleviate some of this antagonism that we're getting from the police or from other outside communities, or even Starbucks or whomever else is attacking us at the time, right? So that I went into fashion, because every time you put on something, it's like a walking billboard. So I started doing shirts and things like that with empowering slogans and empowering, images and things of that sort, with like king and queen and things of that nature. Because if I put the king shirt on and I walk around with that on, it may be a little bit more difficult for a police officer to treat me as anything less than a king or royalty. It may be tough for you or me, Mike, to call each other this N-word back and forth if you have the mentality that I am a king and what I, do is in royalty. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So I wanted to try to put some positive imagery on clothes, and I felt like if I could do that and I could gain what quote unquote a following doing that, then I could start to influence people in positive ways and with positive imagery in books and film, which really was my ultimate goal. Right? So I started off with doing clothes and still do clothes, but as that grew and as the clothes started, I started getting a little bit more success with this and that. I started saying, okay, now let me break into doing this book. And so with the book, again, with this idea of imagery, I took 14 different fathers and families in different scenarios, whether it is the scenario of going through child support court and family court, whether it's a brother who has a couple kids by a couple different women, whether it is a grandfather who saw the black family before crack and after crack, whether it's an African brother who's kind of trying to keep his culture and how to maintain the African traditional cultures in this American societal culture, whether it is a black man who is raising biracial kids, whether it is a brother who is taking on kids who are not his biological children and how he's raising them. All these different scenarios and all these different different kind of complexities of black fatherhood, I wanted to provide some positive imagery around those. And I heard you and Harrison speak to go from knowledge to know-how, right?
That's right.
These guys give some knowledge and they also give some know-how. This is how I'm doing it. This is how I'm getting through. This is how I am a father is in California who's raising children and connecting with children who are out in Florida. I'm a long distance dad. You know what I mean? How do we navigate those scenarios? How do we navigate the stay-at-home dad? How does he navigate, when he's supposed to be the quote-unquote breadwinner? All these different types of things. So these scenarios provide some imagery around black fathers and families who are, not perfect, who are going through ups and downs, these trials and tribulations, but also how they're getting through it, how they've gotten over it, and how to share some of this know-how with some other brothers who are facing these same scenarios. So with that, we interviewed a number of different men, a couple women, and that became kind of the meat of the book. And then I add my kind of spices to it, and my editing and my introductions and things like that. But as we're interviewing them, we also film the interviews. So the book turns into a film in that we took some of the interviews from the book, and we kind of, edited them and made them into a movie. So some of the people who are in the book are in the movie, but some of the people who are in the movie are not in the book, and vice versa. So there's some crossover and carryover, but there's also new people that are introduced in the movie that are not in the book, and vice versa. It's not just like a carbon copy of the other. You know what I mean?
Gotcha.
There's some difference between the two, and honestly, both have been having great success in the communities. The movie itself has gotten some traction in Africa and the Caribbean, as well as the book, as
wow.
well as places in America. So, it's not on the New York Times best-selling list, and that's okay. Hopefully it will be, but it's on the Black America,
there you go.
most impactful community list, and I'm cool with that. That's exactly what I started out with, trying to get impact in the community. If I can get some community satisfaction, some community, praise, then the commercial success hopefully will come. But at the same time, man, it's a black story. These are black stories. I don't expect white America to really just gravitate towards it. However, if we're talking about fatherhood, that impacts white, Asian, Latino, black, green, orange, purple. Everybody can kind of gain some wisdom and some understanding, some know-how from these men. But
what I was going to say right there was interesting, because principles and concepts transcend genre. They transcend circumstance, right? So to your point, if you're providing legitimate information and you're providing things that people can take and apply to their own circumstance, it doesn't matter who you're talking to. You're talking in a tone that speaks to black men. You speaks to black families. But at the end of the day, anybody who picks that up, anybody who buys the film can gain something from, black fatherhood, trials and tribulations, testimony and triumph.
Absolutely. I got a chance to really show this in front of a group, the movie, in front of a whole group of Latinos in Oakland. And they would come up to me afterwards, man, this makes so much sense. We deal with the same things, and yada, yada, yada. I had a white guy come up to me and say, man, this is my story, too. It is black guys, but this is my story, too. So, there's been some, what's the word I'm looking for? Other races can kind of vibe with it and have vibe with it, and told me personally. But, I set out to impact the black community first and foremost.
It's something you say there which is interesting, because I was interviewed on a platform. This was probably about almost a year ago, and the guy was asking me. He was just like, you're doing black fathers, black fathers now, and black family apparel, and everything's black. Why not just do fathers now and fathers apparel? And I took a step back and I explained to him that at the end of the day, it's kind of the same example I just mentioned about concepts, and if you're using principles, they transcend genre, they transcend anybody that you're talking to. But at the end of the day, when you think about what it is you're saying, we're talking in a specific tone. It's kind of like hip-hop, right? If you think about hip-hop is using language or using examples that speak to a particular demographic. But if you take a step back and see who buys hip-hop, it's not necessarily that demographic that they're speaking to. Or if you think about country music might use a tone or might use some type of examples that, might relate to not suburban, but rural, non-black, clientele or non-black listeners. But at the end of the day, there are some black folks who dig country music, right? So it's all about the tone that you're using, but the principles that you evoke in your writing or in the film can be applied across the board outside of just fatherhood. I mean, to life, because I look at some of the stuff that I'm creating, and it's about personal development. You know what I'm saying? I mean, you can take that, but you have to have the wherewithal to go beyond the title and sift beyond that to see the value and the wisdom there. You know what I'm saying? It's like Martin Luther King, right? You think about this. Martin Luther King's nonviolent movement was based on Mahatma Gandhi, right? Martin Luther King was a Christian. Mahatma Gandhi was a Hindu, right? They had totally different beliefs, totally different structures or whatever, but at the end of the day, King was able to kind of sift through and see something there that applied to what he was doing. But you have to have maturity to be able to do that. And so that's what I hope that people, whether, you're the brothers, that are looking to gain specifically from this, or somebody who's listening to this podcast that's not necessarily a black man, you can gain something from what Dr. Khalid White has put together. But you have to have the maturity to look beyond the title, so to speak, if it's not something that directly applies to you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that, Mike. I mean, you illustrated it eloquently. The wisdom, the knowledge, the know-how, the practical applications apply across the board. You know what I mean? It's like if you learning math and you have a math teacher who is Asian, or a math teacher who is African, or a math teacher who is an American, we still all teaching math, and you can take these same concepts and apply it to how you need to apply it. So who you get the information from, I know for a lot of times people will look at we're just trained to look at race in the United States. That's just, there's no two ways about that. But after you take a step back from that, you will be able to utilize the principles, the knowledge, the wisdom, the know-how, regardless of who you get it from, if you think it's sound principles, knowledge, wisdom, and know-how, right? So, once we get past the race, or once you get past the title, like you said, man, these things apply across the board to all fathers. And same thing with the Black Fathers Now podcast. It's really about fathers, but however, the African American or the black father is the one that is always highlighted as being absent, deadbeat, gone, irresponsible. They don't, I can't say for a fact if that stereotype applies to other groups, because I'm black, you know what I mean? I know the stereotypes for us. But yeah, we're domestic violence, we're incarcerated, we're addicts, we make 17 kids with 17 different women. I mean, Target just had a baby daddy card with black people on the front of the baby daddy card.
That's
from
crazy.
Target.
Crazy.
You know what I mean? So it wasn't a white baby daddy. You know what I mean?
No, they're just playing into the stereotype.
Exactly. So we get these stereotypes attached to us, and so just in the similar vein as Black Fathers Now, what I'm doing is to alleviate and address and challenge these stereotypes that are put on our shoulders. But fatherhood applies to people across the world in all shapes, sizes, and colors.
That is so real, so true. And fellas, and I know there's some ladies listening to this, make sure y'all grab a copy of Black Fatherhood, Trials and Tribulations, Testimony and Triumph, the book and the film. And you also have, do apparel as well. Talk to us a little bit about how, folks can check out your work, where they can get in touch with you, where they can, find the book, find the film, find some of the apparel. Where can they get in touch with you, my man?
There's several different ways. Obviously, social media, everything is at Black Empower, which is BLKMPWR. It's Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, all that at Black Empower. You can go on the website, www.blkmpwr. That's, blackempower.com. You can Google Black Empower. You can Google my name, Khalid White. A bunch of stuff's going to pop up. People always tell me, man, I saw you on YouTube, or I saw you on this, I saw you do. Hey, all right. Thank you. But yeah, or, for those who like to do the whole kind of mainstream shopping, all the stuff is on Amazon. Amazon Prime has the movie now. Amazon Prime has the books. Amazon Kindle. You can get all on that. But if you support black businesses and black-owned and operated independent businesses like Black Fathers Now and like Black Empower, reach out to me, blkmpwr.com. Yep.
And so we'll make sure to have that in the show notes. So most definitely visit www.blkmpwer, Black Empower, but blkmpwer.com. And that's the same on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. And make sure you get at Dr. Khalid White and let him know you heard about him on Black Fathers Now. I got a question. So you've created these things, and you create these entities, these venues, or these things to impact the community, to impact fatherhood, to help change the narrative of fatherhood. In the creation of all of this, how has all of this stuff impacted you as a father?
Wow, and people ask me that all the time, man. So we go from now, Mike, being able to talk the talk to having to really walk the walk.
Yes.
Even more so, right? People look at me as the father expert now, and I'm not, because there's no expertise in it at all. I'm learning like everybody else is learning on the fly. But it has impacted my fatherhood in that, man, I'm more conscious now of the need for me to kind of shake some of these, what's the word I'm looking for? To shake some of the notions that I had about fatherhood going into it, and the notions that I had about the role of fathers, man, is really challenging me to be more flexible in my own father role. But it's really, it's like, hey, man, now that you put this stuff out, people are looking at you like some sort of expert, so you got to really be walking the walk and talking the talk, and being, even more hands-on than, I thought I was before. So it's a personal challenge, I think, as far as that's concerned. With the Black fatherhood piece, man, how it's affected my fathering also is that I am able to articulate and understand and now articulate some of the struggles that other men have.
Mm.
And that's impacted me in terms of being a father. You know, I'm able to kind of take other people's stories now and use them as material for me to know what I want to do, but also for some things for me to stay away from doing. You know, because they share some things that didn't work for them with me. They shared a lot of things that are working. And I'm trying to gravitate towards the things that are working because my daughter is 11, you know, and some of the men that I talk to are elders and have kids who are grown or grandkids. And, you know, I want to get from 11 to 21. How do I get to that? Or 11 just to 15, you know?
That's right.
So how do I get through these, you know, tween stages and these teen stages? What did you do? So it's kind of, you know, I'm taking notes. I've taken notes. I've seen, okay, these things work. These things may not work. Stay away from this. Try this. And it's also just impacting my father on kind of a day-to-day basis as far as that's concerned. So, yeah, man, I mean, you know, I need the help and I need the advice from seasoned fathers and seasoned men and women, just like anybody else does. I'm not an expert. I don't think you can really mark yourself as having any expertise in this because it changes daily or weekly or monthly. And so, you know, what I'm dealing with now at 10 and 11 was different than what I've dealt with raising a daughter at 2 and 3.
That's right.
It's different. It changes, you know.
And you also, you mentioned something that to me is the loose definition of wisdom. And that's being able, you know, anybody can learn from their own story and journey, right? But it takes a wise man to be able to learn from the journey of others, right? And so for you, by doing your research and by doing, you know, the interviews and conducting the you know, the interviews that you've conducted, it allows you to garner wisdom from the experience of others. And fellas, as you listen to this, that's something that I want you to take away from, you know, the journey of Dr. Khalid White, in the sense that he was able to learn from the journey of others, the experience of others, synthesize that, figure out what, you know, sometimes the preachers will say, you know, eat the meat and spit out the bones, you know what I'm saying? And so you're able to synthesize that information and apply it as needed to your life. And that's the whole, you know, when you think about books or when you think about finding research and everything is not going to be directly relatable to your experience. But if you have discernment, if you have wisdom, then you can take what's needed, apply it, and, you know, relieve yourself of everything else. And so, fellas, pay attention to that. Learn from the experiences of others. We can all learn from our own experiences, but if we really can take time to listen, to reach out to, and learn from the experiences of others, we'll be so much farther along in the process of being a father. So, absolutely. Man, that's fascinating. And so, brother, like when, you know, I guess as we kind of end this thing up, man, do you have any specific wisdom or, you know, a quote or something that you'd like to leave with the brothers listening today?
Let me see. A quote or specific wisdom. I can't think of a quote right off the top of my head, something I want to hit somebody with, something that's powerful, right? I don't have that right now.
Look, I put you on the spot, but it's all good.
Yeah. Well, words of wisdom for sure. Words of wisdom, man, I would just say, look, it's almost like investing in the stock market, being a father, or investing in self. It's like investing in the stock market. We're talking about long-term gain and long-term results and return on investment over the long haul. So the seeds that you plant with your child, with your spouse, with yourself, you know, early on, is supposed to give you some return on investment down the line. A lot of us, myself included, get caught up in trying to harvest the fruit really before it's ready, right? So, you know, we put in the seed yesterday, we expect a return today. That's just how the world is working now. Everything's like kind of this microwave society. So what I'm finding from these brothers that I've, you know, interviewed and worked with, and even from some of these young men that I work with who are younger than me, is that, look, you got to have some patience. What you said, in addition to that, you got to have some wisdom and some discernment, right? To make sure that you invest wisely, that you sow this seed, because you'll reap this harvest later on. So in the journey of fatherhood, what I'm seeing is that, man, we're looking at planting these seeds daily to get some return on investment down the line. And I see it in my own life, whether it was being around these black books and these autobiographies when I was young.
Mm-hmm.
Now, as a mature man in my 30s, I'm able to, okay, I can use some of that wisdom to create my own autobiography. I love the autobiography thing, and I use Malcolm's story or I use Dr. King's story to kind of, add some spice to my life and to be able to use that and move on with it. And I think that's why I use the autobiographies or smaller autobiographies to make this collection of stories in Black Fatherhood. Because of the exposure, the seeds that were planted way back in the day. So, back to the point, I think that, we're looking at investing, especially investing in our children, investing in our relationships for this long-term dividends on the back end. It's a long haul. It is, longitudinal, as you will. You know what I mean? It's not overnight. There's no app you can download and just become an instant success in fathering and parenthood. And it doesn't work like that. I'm seeing it's long term. So we got to be in it for the long haul, just like you investing in the stock market. It's not an overnight thing. You're not going to hit. It's not like hitting the lotto. No, this is long term investment. And to invest in your relationships, invest in the relationships with your partner, with your children, with your community. That's how we start having this community success.
Yeah. Fellas, dig the wisdom from Dr. Khalid Akil White. Fatherhood is not the lotto. It's a long-term and consistent investment. Fatherhood is not the lotto. It is a long-term, consistent investment. Brother, I want to acknowledge you for taking time out of your busy schedule, to come on and share, your journey, your story, your history, and, some of the things that you have going on to impact the community and, ultimately impact the world. I want to acknowledge you for taking time out of your schedule to come and share with us. And, fellas, again, make sure you visit www.blackempower.com, BLKMPWR.com, and you can follow him on all social media platforms, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and I'll have all of that in the show notes. Make sure you grab a copy of his book, Black Fatherhood, Trials and Tribulations, Testimony and Triumph, as well as grab a copy of the film of the same title, Black Fatherhood, Trials and Tribulations, Testimony and Triumph, and support this brother, man. Support him. Let him know you heard about him on Black Fathers Now. And brother, I want to thank you, man. Thank you for taking time.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you for having me. Thank you, Black Fathers Now. I appreciate it. Much respect, much love. I listened to some other podcasts that you've done. And this is great, man. It's great what you're doing for us. So thank you.
No doubt, my brother. And fellas, as always, visit blackfathersnow.com. Look, subscribe via Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, iTunes, Google Play. Anywhere you listen to podcasts, subscribe, leave comments, share it out with your friends, with your family. Just share with anybody, man, because anybody can gain from this insight that, we shared today. This episode is brought to you by blackfamilyapparel.com. Visit blackfamilyapparel.com to grab some dope apparel that celebrates the nuances of the black family. And, as always, y'all be blessed, well, and wise. And I'll holler at you. Peace.
Yo, fellas, I hope you enjoyed today's episode. And always visit blackfathersnow.com, as well as follow Black Fathers Now on virtually every social media platform you can think of. Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, everywhere. Just follow us and engage with us, man. Look forward to hearing from you. And I guess until next time, I'll holler at you. Peace.